So now you've learned a little bit about compass control, what it is, perhaps what it is not. And we've kind of scratched the surface on a few things, looked at the iPad once or twice, but let's do a deeper dive into the compass control user interface on the iOS devices. This could be an iPad or an iPhone, for example. And really the user interface, you could go one of two options with it. If you're going to do modular, it's going to look like what you see here at the top, slightly larger iPads, okay? Now, with modular programming, and we'll walk more into the layout, page by page of the modular UI, but with modular programming, you're basically, it's a predefined UI, and you add the modules to that system. The modules are, what are the devices that I am controlling, okay? So when you drag and drop those modules in, we begin to build a tree of our scenarios in the modular programming. Modular scenario connectivity tree, like each scenario is like, it's a way that you are using the system. Or it could be kind of a zone entry in a multi-zone, like a bar restaurant type system. When you press the buttons that are part of this pre-built UI, you can choose to have add macros to those buttons so that when I press a button, not only does it advance me in the UI, but it also could execute events and actions to configure the room as needed, for example. And you can create the list from top down. If you see my mouse here again, once again moving, you can have that priority of what's at the top, what's really important here for the user, okay? Now with custom programming, again, you go all the way through your C3 training. And with custom, honestly, the iPad's a totally blank palette, okay? And this is how compass control actually started. It was completely open. Which meant you could build a UI like in this example where you have, in this example, I love to give it because the integrator landed a great project, a great client. Instead of thinking in this commercial application, like, hey, what am I going to do for them? They just went straight to their website and they borrowed from their branding on their website themselves. And then with custom programming, they could even import their own images to make icons of the displays in pizza sauce colors, right? So really, it's a wide open palette, but those things, of course, do take a significant amount of time. For those of you who have done it before, we all know. Every time you have to build a new button or a new page, you also have to even think about how's that going to look. And so just having that known, I personally love programming fully custom projects that utilize the graphics from our modular layout. And we actually give you all of those demo projects of the Compass app in the Compass Navigator installation package. So we give them to you as custom projects as well if you'd like to do that. So this is actually what I've been calling modular, is short for modular version 2.0, because this is actually our third generation user interface, where the first generation was that fully custom, as I mentioned, and you had to build everything from scratch, but we did provide kind of a, in all of our trainings and all of our demonstrations was always using one user interface. That is kind of, it was like you could swipe your fingers to go zone through zone. Then we released our modular programming, which introduced the drag and drop. You didn't have to totally build everything from scratch. But that user interface really only fit into a few applications. So then it came time to develop our third generation user interface. And that's the one we've been using for a while now. And it has still passed the test of time aesthetically. It looks very modern, very clean, light colors, as you can see here. But most importantly to me anyhow, is that this user interface has passed the test of installation as well. When developing this, We put our minds together, our expertise, our experience, and we made sure that this UI is going to work in these 7 applications that you see here. Okay. And then before it was even released publicly, we actually took the next steps towards installing it in these applications as well through the beta program, and it worked. And of course, there was feedback and from the beta testers that we applied to improve. That's as it works, right? But that's what's most exciting to me about this, is that this UI, I show here some examples from various application types, but this UI works in these applications. And so here's what we get into with this user interface. It launches into our scenarios page. These large buttons that you see on screen, we call them the scenario buttons. These are the different ways that you are using the system. And we see here in this conference room, for example, it's a single zone system. So they have the option to press presentation, conference call, video conference, or just to press device controls. And if they press presentation, well, if the room is off, of course, you want it to configure the room to be ready for a presentation, similarly with conference call and video conference. And so that is totally optional for you. When you build these scenario buttons, which you don't have to build them graphically, they're going to be there for you. You just tell us, and this is something you'll learn in the C1 plus programming, but you get to type in the text. It says presentation or conference call. You get to choose an image, but do you want it to have those events and actions? And then it's going to build that macro for you that you later customize that macro for all those events that you want to happen as you press the button. And when you press the button, those events will happen, and it will also advance you to the contents page. Here's the contents page, where on the left, the contents is like a menu, a sub-menu of each option within your chosen usage of the room, your chosen scenario. So it's like the table of contents, right? And so this list of contents buttons, this vertical list there, it could be, you could press those buttons to view the various modules in your system, the devices you're wishing to control, right? You could press those buttons to even just press the button, make something happen, like run through another macro is something you could do with that as well. And each time you press that, typically what happens is it adjusts the module space, which is that primary chunk of real estate there. But also you may notice here the volume icon. So, okay, great. I'm doing different things, controlling my system, changing what's on the screen in front of me, perhaps, or the different configurations of the room. How do I control the volume? We have that speaker icon right there. You press that. That brings up the volume control panel, where each scenario, you can choose what is the associated volume device for that scenario. And you can just hit a checkbox that says it's incremental only, or it is with a volume slider. Because if you're just doing IR control, well, the slider is not going to really do anything for you, right? And so that's very easy to choose. All right, here's my volume device for my each scenario. And now regarding that module space, various ways that could be utilized. It's a page for controlling device or the system, though. So we have different types of contents that could go there. One is a multi-zone device, so you can actually see the entire list of outputs and inputs. We use this a lot in bar restaurant, for example, or large applications. Sometimes it's just going to be, hey, I have a switcher and these are my sources. And for that, we have this, what's called an AV endpoint, where this isn't a module for a specific TV or AV receiver or 4x1 HDMI switch. This is a property selection. Hey, this is an AV endpoint. And then you could just tell us what type of, what icon you want to use when you drag the different sources into this endpoint. You could also just attach it to a specific device, what we call a single device. And again, this is all in the C1 programming where we define these things more. But then you could have something like just, hey, here's the module that KeyDigital's development team has made for a specific device, like a video or teleconference appliance or an audio DSP or an AV source.